And turning now to the Trump trials. It was a dramatic day in New York City civil court this afternoon, and not just because former President Trump's former fixer Michael Cohen testified against him for a second straight day. In a shocking moment, former President Trump was actually called to take the stand himself to explain disparaging comments he made in a hallway, which the judge ruled had violated a gag order, barring Mr. Trump from making personal attacks against courtroom staff. Here are those hallway comments earlier today.
This judge is a very partisan judge, with a person who's very partisan sitting alongside of him, perhaps even much more partisan than he is. So we are doing very well. The facts are speaking very loud. He's a totally discredited witness, and you haven't seen anything yet. This goes on for a long time, and he's a totally discredited witness.
Okay, so this is what happens when a defense strategy built on lies and intimidation collides with actual evidence in a courtroom where prosecutors come prepared. A complete and total collapse that left Trump's legal team visibly panicking as their star witness admitted to lying under oath and directly implicated Trump in criminal schemes. During cross-examination on November 22, 2025, prosecutors played secret recordings and presented documents that directly contradicted what the witness had just testified to under oath. When confronted with the undeniable evidence, the witness had no choice but to admit they had been lying, and that admission opened the floodgates to testimony that devastated Trump's defense. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
The former president tried to convince the judge that he was talking about Michael Cohen, not court staff. But the judge was not buying it, and he fined the former president $10,000. And then, a short time later, the former president apparently stormed out of the courtroom. So, outside the courthouse is NBC's Dasha Burns. She joins us now live. Dasha, what in the world happened today?
Yeah, okay, buckle in for a second while I walk you through this, because it certainly is not the courtroom day that we were expecting. So you heard those comments. The line in question was the person that he was referencing sitting alongside the judge. At first, the judge asked Trump's lawyers, who was he referring to? The lawyer said Michael Cohen. The judge said, okay, let me consider that.
Let me walk you through what happened, because this courtroom moment is being described as a prosecutorial kill shot. The kind of devastating evidence presentation that doesn't just damage a defense, but destroys it entirely. The witness had taken a stand presumably to support Trump's narrative, to provide testimony that would help establish innocence, or at least reasonable doubt. Instead, prosecutors systematically dismantled every claim the witness made by playing recordings of conversations the witness had previously denied ever having. When the audio played in that courtroom, when the witness heard their own voice discussing the very things they'd just sworn they knew nothing about, there was nowhere to hide. The moment when the witness admitted lying under oath reportedly created visible shock in the courtroom. Trump's legal team, which had presumably prepared this witness and expected supportive testimony, watched their case collapse in real time. The judge reportedly admonished the witness for perjury. Lying under oath is a crime, and the witness had just committed it in open court with everyone watching. The judge characterized the testimony as outcome determinative, signaling that this admission fundamentally changed the trajectory of the case. Come on. Think about what it means when your own witness admits to lying and then implicates you in criminal conduct. Defense witnesses are supposed to help you. They're supposed to provide testimony that creates doubt about prosecution claims or supports your version of events. When a defense witness flips under cross-examination and starts confirming the prosecution's theory of the case, that's catastrophic. There's no recovery from that. The jury has now seen someone who was supposed to be on Trump's side admit that the prosecution was right all along. The prosecutor's preparation was clearly meticulous and devastating. They didn't just have one piece of contradictory evidence. They had recordings. They had documents that forensic analysis proved had been supposedly destroyed, but were actually recovered. They had insider notes proving coordination between Trump's circle and the witness. Each piece of evidence built on the others, creating a trap that the witness walked right into when they testified falsely about things the prosecutors could prove happened. The forensic recovery of destroyed documents is particularly significant because it suggests consciousness of guilt and obstruction. If the documents were innocent, why destroy them? The fact that they were destroyed or attempted to be destroyed and then recovered through forensic means tells the jury that someone didn't want these documents seen. And when those documents prove coordination and criminal conduct, the destruction attempt itself becomes evidence of guilty knowledge. Multiple witnesses reportedly flipped during the proceedings, with several admitting to intimidation attempts by Trump's circle. This pattern of witness intimidation opens additional criminal exposure for obstruction and conspiracy charges. It's not just the underlying conduct that's criminal. The attempts to cover it up, to pressure witnesses, to destroy evidence are separate crimes that compound the original offenses. Every act of obstruction becomes another charge, another piece of evidence of consciousness of guilt. Legal experts watching the proceedings describe this as the endgame for Trump's strategy, the approach of denying everything, attacking investigators, and hoping witnesses will stay loyal, collapse entirely when actual evidence was presented in a forum where lies can be immediately exposed. The strategy depends on controlling the narrative, but in a courtroom under cross-examination with documentary evidence and recordings, the narrative is controlled by facts, not spin. The public perception shift that experts are noting is significant. Trump has spent years characterizing every investigation and prosecution as a witch hunt, a politically motivated attack by enemies who can't beat him at the ballot box. That framing works when proceedings happen behind closed doors and the public only sees competing claims about what the evidence shows. But when a witness admits lying in open court and implicates Trump directly, the witch hunt narrative becomes much harder to maintain. This isn't prosecutors making accusations, it's Trump's own witness confessing and pointing the finger. The connection to previous evidence disasters for Trump, the Cohen recordings, the documents in the classified case, the financial records in the fraud case, shows a consistent pattern. Trump's defenses depend on witnesses staying loyal and evidence remaining hidden. When witnesses flip or evidence emerges, the defenses collapse because they were built on lies rather than facts. The November 22nd courtroom collapse is the most dramatic example yet, but it fits a pattern that has repeated across multiple cases. The implications for Trump's inner circle extend beyond Trump himself. The admitted intimidation attempts mean that people in Trump's orbit may face separate charges for obstruction and witness tampering. The conspiracy implications suggest coordinated criminal conduct that could ensnare multiple defendants. When a witness flips and starts cooperating, they often provide information about others involved in the scheme, information that leads to additional prosecutions and additional pressure on other witnesses to cooperate. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly what happened in that courtroom and why the witness collapse was so devastating. We're going to look at the evidence prosecutors presented and how they trapped the witness in undeniable lies. We're going to examine the implications for Trump's defense strategy across all his cases, and we're going to discuss what comes next now that this prosecution has achieved what legal experts are calling a decisive breakthrough. Let's get into it. All right, let's get into the specific details of how prosecutors achieved this courtroom victory and what it reveals about the evidence they've assembled against Trump, because understanding the prosecution's methodology helps explain why this collapse was so complete and so devastating. The star witness who collapsed under cross-examination had apparently been prepared by Trump's legal team to provide testimony supporting the defense's version of events. In criminal trials, both sides typically prepare their witnesses extensively, going over the questions that will be asked, reviewing documents, ensuring the witness understands what they're expected to say and how to handle cross-examination. The witness presumably testified on direct examination in ways that helped Trump's case, only to be systematically destroyed when prosecutors took over. The key to the prosecution's success was preparation that anticipated exactly what the witness would say and assembling evidence that proved those claims false. When prosecutors play a recording of a defendant or witness saying the opposite of what they just testified to, there's no recovery. The jury doesn't have to decide who to believe. They can hear with their own ears what was actually said. The witness can't claim the recording is fake or taken out of context when it's clearly their voice discussing the very matters they claim to know nothing about. The recordings played during cross-examination reportedly captured discussions of conduct the witness had denied under oath moments earlier. This creates an immediate credibility catastrophe. The witness is caught lying in real time, and everything else they've said becomes suspect. If they lied about this, what else did they lie about? The jury naturally concludes that testimony from someone who demonstrably perjured themselves cannot be trusted on anything. The forensic recovery of supposedly destroyed documents adds another devastating dimension. When documents are destroyed, whether by shredding, deletion, or other means, that destruction can itself be evidence of criminal intent. Why would someone destroy documents if those documents didn't contain damaging information? The act of destruction suggests the destroyer knew the documents were problematic and wanted to hide them from investigators. Modern forensic techniques often allow recovery of destroyed or deleted documents. Deleted computer files frequently remain on hard drives until overwritten. Shredded documents can sometimes be reconstructed. Emails thought to be deleted exist in backups and on recipient systems. The prosecution's ability to recover documents the witness believed were destroyed meant the witness was confronted with evidence they thought no longer existed. a shocking moment that likely contributed to the rapid collapse of their testimony. The insider notes proving coordination were apparently contemporaneous records of discussions and decisions among Trump's circle. These notes, whether taken by the witness themselves or obtained from other sources, documented conversations and agreements that contradicted the witness's testimony. When a witness denies that certain discussions occurred and prosecutors produce notes from those exact discussions, the denial becomes untenable. The witness's admission of lying under oath is itself a criminal act, perjury, that creates additional legal jeopardy for the witness and additional leverage for prosecutors. A witness who has just committed perjury in open court has strong incentives to cooperate fully with prosecutors in hopes of reducing their own exposure. The admission likely transformed the witness from a defense asset into a prosecution cooperator willing to provide testimony against Trump and others in exchange for consideration on perjury charges. The judge's characterization of the testimony as outcome determinative signals to all parties and to any observers that this moment fundamentally changed the case. Judges are typically careful about characterizing evidence before a verdict, but when a witness collapse is this complete and this documented, the judge's assessment reflects the obvious reality. The defense theory of the case has been fatally undermined by evidence that can't be explained away. Multiple witnesses flipping during the proceedings suggests the prosecution has built overwhelming leverage across Trump's circle. When one witness flips, it creates pressure on others to cooperate before they're left holding the bag. Each cooperating witness provides information that can be used against other witnesses, creating a cascade of cooperation that prosecutors call rolling up a conspiracy. The first to cooperate gets the best deals. Those who wait face the worst outcomes. The admitted intimidation attempts by Trump's circle open separate criminal exposure for obstruction of justice and witness tampering. These are serious federal crimes that can result in significant prison sentences. The pattern of intimidation suggests that Trump's defense strategy wasn't just passive denial, but active efforts to prevent truthful testimony, efforts that themselves constitute criminal conduct. Each intimidation attempt, once documented and admitted, becomes another charge and another piece of evidence of consciousness of guilt. The legal experts describing this as endgame for Trump's strategy are recognizing that the approach Trump has used throughout his legal troubles has reached its terminal failure. The strategy of denying everything, attacking investigators as politically motivated, pressuring witnesses to stay loyal, and hoping evidence remains hidden works only as long as the witnesses hold and the evidence stays hidden. When witnesses crack under the pressure of actual courtroom examination and evidence emerges despite efforts to destroy it, the strategy has nothing left. The shift in public perception from witch hunt to proven guilt is significant for the political dimensions of Trump's legal troubles. For years, Trump has maintained support among his base by characterizing all investigations as politically motivated attacks. This framing depends on the public never seeing direct evidence of guilt, only competing claims between Trump and his accusers. When evidence is presented in court and witnesses admit to lying to cover for Trump, the witch hunt narrative becomes harder to sustain even among supporters who want to believe it. The connection to previous cases where evidence and witness testimony devastated Trump's defenses shows a consistent pattern. In the hush money case, the Cohen recordings proved Trump's direct involvement in the payment scheme. In the civil fraud case, Cohen's testimony about Trump directing asset inflation was corroborated by documentary evidence. In the classified documents case before it was dismissed, testimony from Trump's own employees described his handling of the documents. The pattern is always the same. Trump's defenses depend on witnesses staying loyal and evidence staying hidden, and they collapse when either condition fails. The implications for the inner circle are significant, because witness cooperation typically doesn't stop with one case or one subject. When a witness begins cooperating, prosecutors often debrief them extensively about everything they know, not just the immediate case, but any other potential criminal conduct they're aware of. A cooperating witness from Trump's circle may provide information about multiple schemes, multiple participants, and multiple areas of potential criminal exposure. This creates cascading legal risk for anyone who worked closely with Trump and participated in questionable conduct. The judge's admonishment for perjury in open court creates a record that has consequences beyond this specific proceeding. A witness found to have committed perjury faces potential prosecution for that crime, loses all credibility as a witness in any future proceeding, and may face professional consequences if they hold positions requiring honesty and integrity. The courtroom admission captured in the record becomes a permanent mark that follows the witness regardless of what happens in the underlying case. Okay, so let's break this down into the key points that everyone needs to understand, because this courtroom collapse represents a devastating blow to Trump's defense strategy that has implications across all his legal troubles. Point number 1, a star defense witness admitted lying under oath after prosecutors played recordings and presented documents that directly contradicted their testimony, turning what was supposed to be helpful defense testimony into a prosecution victory when the witness had no choice but to confess to perjury in open court. Point number 2, The forensic recovery of destroyed documents and production of insider notes proved coordination that the witness denied, demonstrating that prosecution preparation was thorough enough to anticipate and refute defense claims with documentary evidence that couldn't be explained away. Point number 3, the judge's characterization of the testimony as outcome determinative signals that this collapse fundamentally changed the case trajectory, acknowledging that the defense theory has been fatally undermined by evidence presented in open court. Point number 4, multiple witnesses flipping and admitting intimidation attempts opens additional criminal exposure for obstruction and witness tampering, expanding potential charges against Trump's circle and creating cascade effects as each cooperating witness provides information about others. Point number 5, the shift from witch hunt narrative to documented guilt in open court transforms public perception of Trump's legal troubles, making it harder to maintain the political defense that has sustained base support despite mounting cases. The significance of recordings as evidence cannot be overstated for understanding why this collapse was so complete. In legal proceedings, credibility contests between witnesses often end inconclusively. The jury has to decide who to believe based on demeanor, consistency, and corroborating evidence. But recordings eliminate the credibility contest entirely. When the jury can hear with their own ears what was said, they don't have to trust anyone's characterization or recollection. The recording is the evidence, unfiltered and undeniable. The prosecution's ability to obtain these recordings, whether through cooperating witnesses who made them, through electronic surveillance authorized by courts, or through other investigative means, reflects extensive preparation over a long period. Prosecutors don't stumble onto recordings during trial, they obtain them during investigation and build their case around them. The fact that prosecutors had recordings to play during cross-examination means they knew exactly what the witness would say and had prepared the evidence to refute it. The forensic document recovery similarly reflects sophisticated investigative capability. When targets believe they've destroyed evidence, they often become complacent. They stop worrying about documents they think no longer exist. Prosecutors who can recover those documents catch targets in exactly this kind of trap. The witness testified about non-existent coordination, confident the documentary evidence had been destroyed, only to be confronted with the recovered documents proving coordination did occur. The insider notes are particularly valuable evidence because they're typically created contemporaneously with the events they describe. Unlike testimony, which is based on memory that can fade or be influenced, notes taken at the time capture what actually happened when it happened. When those notes describe coordination that a witness denies, the notes are generally more credible than the denial because they weren't created with any awareness that they might become evidence. The perjury admission creates immediate legal consequences for the witness and demonstrates the real risks of lying to protect Trump. Perjury is a felony that can result in years in prison. Witnesses who lie for Trump face this exposure personally. Trump can't pardon state perjury convictions, and even federal perjury charges create real legal jeopardy. The courtroom admission means the witness has already confessed to the crime. The only question is what consequences follow and whether cooperation can reduce them. The cascade effect, when witnesses flip, is one of the most powerful tools prosecutors have in conspiracy cases. Each cooperating witness provides information that can be used to pressure other witnesses. Each refusal to cooperate looks worse when others have already begun cooperating. The first witnesses to flip often get the best deals. Those who hold out face the worst outcomes because prosecutors have less need for their cooperating once others have provided the same information. Trump's circle is now experiencing this cascade, with multiple witnesses apparently deciding that cooperating serves their interests better than continued loyalty. The intimidation admissions transformed the case from the underlying conduct to the cover-up. Nixon's downfall came not from the Watergate break-in itself, but from the obstruction that followed. When Trump's circle engaged in witness intimidation, they added new crimes to whatever underlying conduct was being investigated. Each intimidation attempt, once documented, becomes a separate charge that can result in separate punishment. The cover-up compounds the original crime and often creates more serious legal exposure. For the 2026 implications, this courtroom collapse provides dramatic evidence for Democratic messaging about Trump's criminality. His own witness admitted he's guilty is a simple, powerful message that cuts through partisan noise. The witness wasn't a political opponent or a hostile investigator. They were someone who went to court to help Trump and ended up confessing and implicating him instead. That narrative is much harder to dismiss as a witch hunt. For Republican candidates trying to maintain distance from Trump's legal troubles, this kind of evidence makes distance impossible. You can't credibly claim prosecutions are politically motivated when defense witnesses are confessing in open court. You can't argue Trump is being treated unfairly when the evidence against him includes recordings and documents that prove criminal conduct. The courtroom collapse forces Republicans to either defend the indefensible or break from Trump more decisively than most have been willing to. The legal expert characterization of this as endgame for Trump's strategy recognizes that the approach Trump has relied on throughout his legal career has reached its limits. Trump has always counted on being able to outlast, outspin, and intimidate his way through legal challenges. But this works only against opponents without resources and leverage. Prosecutors with recordings, forensic capability, and witness cooperation are a different kind of opponent, one that Trump's usual tactics can't defeat. Looking at the pattern across Trump's legal troubles, the consistent thread is that defenses built on lies eventually collapse when confronted with evidence. The hush money conviction came despite denials because recordings existed. The fraud judgment came despite claims of innocence because documents proved systematic deception. Now this case is collapsing because prosecutors came to court with evidence that made lies unsustainable. The lesson for Trump should be clear. You can't lie your way out of legal trouble when prosecutors have proof. The implications for Trump's inner circle extend beyond immediate legal exposure to long-term calculation about loyalty. Associates who watch the star witness get destroyed in cross-examination and face perjury charges for lying to protect Trump have to ask themselves whether similar loyalty is worth the risk. The answer increasingly appears to be no, hence the multiple witnesses flipping and the cascade of cooperation. Loyalty to Trump carries real costs, and those costs are becoming clearer with each courtroom disaster. Anyway, that's where things stand with this devastating courtroom collapse that saw a star Trump witness admit to lying under oath and implicate Trump directly in criminal conduct, the recordings that made denial impossible, the recovered documents proving coordination despite destruction attempts, the judge's characterization of the testimony as outcome determinative, the multiple witnesses flipping and admitting intimidation, and the shift from witch hunt narrative to documented guilt in open court. Make sure you're subscribed because this courtroom collapse is part of a broader pattern of legal defeats converging on Trump from every direction. The hush money conviction, the fraud judgment, the Carroll damages, the pardon scandals, the impeachment push, and now a star witness confessing in open court. Each piece adds to the others in creating a comprehensive picture of criminality that's becoming impossible to deny, even for Trump's most committed supporters. And if this is how Trump's legal defenses perform when actually tested by evidence, the rest of his legal troubles are heading towards similar conclusions. I'll see you in the next one.